wanted to work in this space to, to ensure that the money that is being spent is spent with intent. There are a few organizations whose, I think from 2010 to 2015, 16, any CSR report that you take would have been written by us, especially in some organizations in Gujarat. 2% now, I think, accounts for over 30,000 crores a year.
Have you come across any situation where an impact program has failed?
A lot of times when donors would see, say, some program working very well in one state and would say, let's copy paste it to the other state. That time, I think, unless you don't contextualize it, it sort of doesn't work. Organization which has a 10 crore say CSR budget, and if you are spending over 1 crore on a particular one project, then you have to do an evaluation study. Then you have to show the impact of how you are doing from a third party like us. So scale usually comes when government is part of anything that you do, because CSR might seem 30,000 crore plus might seem a large number, but if you really put down the 2-3 large government schemes, it will go. Just the 2-3 large schemes will be higher than 30,000 crores. Okay.
And when organizations they have multiple opportunities and proposals to invest in various projects, right? So any idea of how they take up a call of which project to invest in? How do they measure their return on investment?
So there is a social return on investment method actually, which a UK-based organization has done, which basically says for every rupee you've invested, what is the value generated as per the community.
Hi all, welcome to the Strategic Pulse. I'm your host Sudarshan. Today we have Payal Mulchandani as our podcast guest. She is the co-founder of the Fourth Wheel company, which is in the social impact consulting space. She has a background in education from Harvard and has eventually started this company. In this episode, we will deep dive and understand the social impact consulting space. How do these consulting firms make money? What really goes behind the scenes? How is social impact created, measured, reported, on-ground realities, and also various career opportunities in this space. Stay tuned and watch the entire episode. Thank you. So hi Payal, welcome to the Strategic Pulse. I'm your host Sudarshan. For all our viewers who are meeting you for the first time, can you briefly share what you do and what Fourth Wheel is all about?
So Fourth Wheel is about 15 years old now. We started in Ahmedabad, been in Bombay since the last 10 years. We work in the social impact consulting space. Mainly work with a lot of corporates, NGOs, social enterprises, some parts of the government, focusing on doing impact measurement and evaluation. What that basically means is we work with organizations who are implementing social impact projects to help them figure what's working, what's not, how to look at the scale of it, what to do next, what to sort of deep dive into. So those are the aspects we work in the social impact space for.
And how did you get into this?
So me and my friend, both of us were in the same school in Ahmedabad, know each other from the 9th grade, obviously went to different colleges, masters at different points in time, but both of us had worked in research post our college time, and I worked with the corporate in the CSR team. She was working with a semi-government research organization in Ahmedabad. And both of us, when we did our masters, I was looking at social entrepreneurship, she was looking at CSR. So when we came back home to Ahmedabad, since this is 2010, Ahmedabad, that point didn't have so many opportunities in this space. So we wanted to sort of start working together on this aspect that, at that time CSR was not even compulsory. It became compulsory later, 3-4 years down. But we wanted to work in this space to, to ensure that the money that is being spent is spent with intent and spent with looking at, what the outcomes could be. So that's why we started, but also we started when we were 23. So we've also winged a lot of things as we went. So, we started as a more documentation process because we spoke Gujarati, Hindi and wrote English at the same time. A lot of our work started with just going to the field, collecting stories, writing annual reports. There are a few organizations whose, I think from 2010 to 2015, 16, any CSR report that you take would have been written by us, especially in some organizations in Gujarat. So it became also an aspect where we learned on the go. So we did learn obviously theories and everything in our education, but obviously on ground, what happens to what you learn, there is always a disconnect. So for us also to immerse in the process, we started, working like this, and then eventually we've always sort of had a process where we identify the problem and then bring in the solution. So first documentation became like, an issue. Everyone was doing a lot of things, didn't know how to sort of document it well. We did all of that. Then we sort of moved on to sort of looking at evaluation as a service, where a donor has given some money and you would come in as third party to evaluate what is the impact. Now, last 4-5 years, we've moved to monitoring and evaluation, accountability and learning, which is in a short, it's called MEAN, where we help organizations set up these systems from day zero. That when they're designing the program, what outputs, outcomes they are looking at, what does impact look like, does everyone in the organization, the donor, have a similar language? So we've also grown as professionals as the company has grown since we started so early. So it sort of started with research interest, and then it sort of we've developed services as we went, depending on what the market needs as well.
Okay. So for someone watching this podcast and who has no idea about social impact, can you explain in simple words what does it exactly mean in the business framework?
So social impact, in a simpler term, is that if you've been able to change someone's sort of course, like it's a lot of times we look at outputs. For example, I would say, and a lot of people would have heard of the skill development program, say that the government does. So you would always see that 1,000 people trained, 1 lakh people trained. So I would say those are the outputs. But social impact would be how you have impacted that person's life in terms of, has their salary grown, have they grown in their professional. So social impact, I would say, is much more long term. And if your program is able to sort of bring in that change, and that change is sustainable, that is what we would call social impact. And in the business term of things, there are multiple sort of players around this. Obviously, there's the corporates, because there's CSR now is compulsory. It's been compulsory for quite a few years. Also, the 2% now I think accounts for over 30,000 crores a year.
Oh wow.
So it's a large sort
Big
of.
market.
But obviously, there are organizations which will have just 20 lakhs budget of their 2%. There are larger banks who have, say, over 100 crores a year that they have to spend on CSR, because 2% of the kind of profits that they have is also a very large number. So those are more the donor side of things, and then there are NGOs who implement. And in India, I'm sure you know there have been NGOs over the years since the beginning of everything. So they are the implementing organizations, and now there are also social enterprises who work on a profit come social impact model. So they are looking at both, not as NGOs who are sort of looking at grants, but they would also generate their own sort of income in a way. That's what social enterprises do. Where we come in, we are called intermediaries. So we sort of help on certain aspects, like like I said, if you want to do an evaluation report, if you want to set up some systems, we are intermediary who services all these different players will take. So that's where we fit in the business side of things.
And this can be also done across different sectors like healthcare, education, etc. So is it different to measure and have an impact across these sectors?
So the way things are done sort of remains same. Obviously, what you are trying to collect data on, what indicators you are trying to collect data on, what frameworks you are looking at would change sector to sector. Say, for example, in education, you are looking at foundational literacy. That if you would have heard of the ASA report, which sort of goes every year and checks that does a third grade student actually is able to write and learn how a third grade student is, or is it lower, is it higher? So there are different methods in education. Healthcare has its own method. So frameworks are different, but the approach in a way of what we would do will remain the same.
Okay. And also a lot of organizations, they claim that they're actually creating an impact. But how do you, having been in this field for so long, differentiate between actually creating real impact or just the intention of just branding?
Yeah, I think there is always a confusion between intent and impact. So again, going back to the skill development, this thing example, a lot of times you would only see that okay, we've trained 1 lakh people. So that is still an intent and output number. But again, like I said, the impact is are they still stuck for the last 3 years on a 10,000 salary? Have they sort of moved from has their professional goal moved? Have they upscaled? So those I think I would say is the impact. And but a lot of times the number is always stuck on intent. Branding, I would say, would be if you're just taking out a story of one person and saying that okay, we have impacted and changed this person's life, would be branding. But I would say intent branding sort of should lead to impact, because you are first starting with reaching numbers, but then also what happens, what changes long term is what the impact is, which eventually organizations go to. And I think we are already on that path now, like moving from just saying I did so much to what changed because of what I did.
Okay. And again, in your experience so far, what mistakes are organizations doing when they're creating or measuring impact actually?
In measuring impact, I think a lot of times, I think earlier there was an issue that there was no data. Now I think we are at an issue where there's too much data. Because I think everyone, when they go, because they're spending certain amount of time, resources to, to go to the field, to go to, say, the rural areas, to collect data, a lot of organizations are like, if you're going, let's just get everything, we'll see how the data can be used. But which is not the right approach, because if you are spending, say, 20-30 minutes with a respondent, say, on a survey, it's still, they are engaged, they'll give you a lot of data. But if you make it like a 1.5 hour interaction just to get everything that you want, obviously, their interest, their responses is going to sort of go down. So understanding what you are doing. So if you're doing a project where, say, for example, in menstrual hygiene, if you're doing certain projects and you are not doing anything, say, for the access to sanitation, and then you're still going and getting some data on those aspects, that doesn't sort of help.
Okay.
So what you are doing, what you are implementing, what your program is looking at doing, you need to collect data on that and not everything, so that you are also focused, because you can't change the world. You can figure what are there 1-2 aspects that I could make a difference on and focus on that, rather than expecting that everything would change because of a program.
So there's basically unnecessary collection of extra data which is not very relevant.
Yes, unless you're going to use it. I think we sort of do this exercise a lot of times with our clients, that they might give us that, okay, we need data on these 30-40 things, but we go deeper into each question to ask them, okay, how would you use the data? So data needs to be used for evidence. So if you're just collecting and not using the data, it's useless. But if that data is helping you change your program, prove certain aspects, then it sort of makes sense. So that, I think, over sort of collection of data is happening a lot nowadays.
And at what stage do you guys come in when an organization has a CSR budget and they have planned everything out? At what stage? Like, can you walk us through the process?
So we usually come, say, through the midpoint or the end. A majority of our work still is that. So if when they would want to do an evaluation study where, say, 1 year or 2 year of the program is done, we would come at that point. But now more and more times it has happened that we are also part of the programs from day zero. We're just starting a program where a NGO is working on a teacher training program, and it's a 4-year long program. So we've been with them from day zero itself, when they are designing the program, when they are sort of figuring their implementation processes. So we are sort of, so meal is not, the monitoring and evaluation is not an afterthought, but it's part of the whole program design. So those are less, but those are increasing. But we would come towards, say, the end. And a lot of times that also happens because there are reporting requirements. So like financial year end, you need to sort of give a report to see what has happened in the year or the year before. So that's why a lot of our work comes around that time as well.
So to put it in simple words, say a company has like they have to do mandatory CSR and they have a budget, everything is allocated, they start the work, and so once the work is ongoing, then you all come in the picture, you all start evaluating, you all start measuring, then you all start even reporting for them on their behalf, correct?
Yes. So usually a CSR would hire us that, we've given these 3 NGOs so much budget on these programs. Say this is our MOU, this is what we have decided to sort of have the outputs and outcomes at. And we would go, say, at the end of year 1 and year 2, see what has been achieved in the last 1 year as against, what was sort of looked at in the MOU stage. So we would come at that point in time, and then the idea is that, okay, for the next stage or the next partner, what can we learn from this evaluation so we don't repeat those same mistakes, or, what can we take this learning to, say, a different partner or different geography as well. So we keep coming at, different sort of mid stages, end stages of a program. And now there are programs which also go on for longer, right? So 3 years, 5 years. So there are middle points decided beforehand where we should come in.
Okay. So a lot of these companies also have their own CSR departments, right? So you work closely with them. You'll act like a consultant to them.
Yes. So a lot of them have CSR departments, but nowadays a lot of them also have foundations. So you would have heard, say, for example, Reliance Foundation.
Yeah.
So in a way, because Reliance has like so many different entities under them, they would sort of collate all their CSR budget and then park it in the foundation. So in a way, it's an extension of the CSR team itself. So a lot of organizations have the department, like you said, and some have foundations. So these are the two ways corporates really work.
Okay. And what are the key metrics which you track to ensure that the program has been successful?
So Matrix, like I said, really changed through the kind of program that you've done. But what we try to sort of develop at the start of any evaluation is what data the organization already has been tracking. Say there's a baseline data that where did we really start with? If we are looking at the skill development program, what sort of income did someone start with for us to then measure? So a lot depends on what has already been collected, what we could sort of build on. And there are obviously a lot of academicians who have developed frameworks, metrics, and all. So we obviously look at those and develop our own in a way, because a lot of academics comes from the global north. So a lot of European, American, British sort of writers have a lot of frameworks. But obviously you need to contextualize it to India. So we sort of learn from those, but we contextualize as to what the program wants and all. So there are no fixed matrix per se, and it changes theme wise to theme wise on what we want to look at.
But so can you share a real life example, having been in this industry so far, of an impact program being successful?
So there are quite a few. There are a lot of organizations who work in, say, healthcare for really, really long. There are organizations in Bombay who've been working in certain, say, slum areas for 10 years, 20 years now, and they have moved from when they would have started with, basic services that, okay, your electricity is available, sanitation is available. Now there are a couple of good organizations in Bombay itself who moved from these one-off activities to training people who live in these areas to ask for their rights, understand what their rights are. So this I think there's always this sort of question on scaling deep. So do you stay in the same sort of location, geography longer, and ensure that the people who are there are then capable enough and know the right things to ask? So that scaling deep has happened in a lot of these organizations, and Bombay has like multiple such examples as well.
Okay. And have you come across any situation where an impact program has failed?
A lot of times when donors would see, say, some program working very well in one state and would say, let's copy paste it to the other state. That time, I think unless you don't contextualize it, it sort of doesn't work. For example, one I think teacher training program only that we were looking at worked very well in the south, in one of the southern states, where where they were moving from using a lot of activity based learning, a lot of different sort of aspects. So it worked very well in south, but the same curriculum module didn't work in a central north state, because there the first issue was the teacher attendance was low, the motivations were low. So that, like, this one step before even giving them tools to implement in school, if there are no teachers coming regularly, if there are no motivations to sort of take on these things, so then it is not going to work. So you have to go a step back to understand, what needs to come first, and then say your curriculum will work. So just copy pasting in a way, doesn't work. You have to, in India also, with our population, with our languages differences, we are as good as multiple countries in a way. So what say works in another country is not going to work here. It's very same for what works in one state is not going to work in the other.
Right. Okay. And also, like we spoke about it earlier, that it's compulsory to do CSR, a certain percent of their profit. It's 2%, right?
2%.
2%. So since they have to do this mandatorily, have you come across a situation where how do you basically ensure that the data is reliable and unbiased, and how do you bridge the gap between what the data is showing and actually what's happening on ground?
So we are very big proponents of using participatory tools, which are basically in any data collection exercise, you would know there are surveys where you go with the questionnaire in a way what we are doing, right? You
Okay.
have a set of questions you are asking me, or there are group discussions, for example, where 4 or 5 people could come together and do. But we like using a lot of participatory tools, which are basically gamifying aspects. So we focus on not just extracting that, because when you go with a questionnaire, you in a way have already thought through that, what could be the response. While in a participatory way and tool, you are getting the respondents to sort of walk through a certain ideas and then sort of come in. So those such trying to gamify things is what we do, and the other aspect is triangulation. That the same kind of question, say in an education program, you're asking the child, you're asking the parents, you're asking the teacher, you're asking, say, a government respondent. So you need to triangulate and understand, what are the differences that are coming in from the different stakeholders, and then only sort of, bring that in. So data is one, but what is backing that data, what story is backing that data is also important. So triangulation and using these participatory tools, we use a lot of these with kids, with women, where people will be a little hesitant in giving you responses. If someone new suddenly
Right.
comes to a school, a lot of time kids don't want to give you answers and all. So we try and make it fun. So it shouldn't be like you're sitting and someone just writing and it
Right.
becomes very boring. So we try to make it fun as a way to collect data as well. So those aspects of getting people to open up and triangulating with different stakeholders sort of ensures that the bias is not there. Because if you, for an example, in a program where you are trying to reduce, say, girls getting married before, like just when they turn 18 or something, if you're going and asking someone, okay, will you get married at 18, obviously socially that's not the right answer or something, everyone will say no. But like, for example, in one project we've looked at it as a sort of a story way, that okay, there's a girl who wants to go outside to study of her village, but her father is saying no. Why is the father right? What would the girl do? So you are putting that person in a third person view. So then they are sort of little open to sort of answer, what they would like and what the person should do. So the different ways you are able to collect data is also very important to ensure bias is less. Otherwise, any question you will say that okay, why are people using say open fields for verification? Everyone will say no. So how do you ask the question, frame the question is also very important to ensure bias is less.
And having done this analysis, have you ever come across a situation where, say, a company reported that they have done this, but it's actually not done at all?
Not really. I mean, obviously there are times when people would say that it looks like from the report that everyone has changed the world, but on the ground it would be that you have made a building, for example. But I think there are a lot of times people do overstate that that because of this 10x things will happen. But like nothing has happened on the ground, has not never happened as such. But I think a lot of times people do overstate of what could be the impact of doing a certain program.
Exaggeration is usually a common
Yeah.
problem, but nothing at all is never the case.
Nothing at all is
Yeah.
never the case. Right. I think now I think it's very easy to sort of track using tools, using data collection, apps and all. So it's not too difficult to ensure. People ask for GPS tagged pictures to ensure that you are able to see. So there are certain obviously audits, because down the chain there's so many people responsible to answer to the next person in line. So usually this doesn't really happen. There are now organizations like in the last, I think, month, I remember seeing on LinkedIn only at least 2 organizations who had mentioned that they've reached 100 crore in their grants. So there are more and more such organizations which are reaching scale, through their programs, because like I said, it's over 30-ish crores in CSR grants. And now with especially with
30,000 crores.
30,000
Huh.
30,000 crores.
Yeah.
And now with especially with USAID shutting down, with Trump sort of getting lesser sort of foreign aid into the country, because he has stopped a lot of these things, especially USAID. So that has had a trickle down effect to a lot of organizations who were getting foreign funds has reduced, and people are reaching out to, instead of those funds, reaching out to more domestic funds with CSR. There's a huge wave of domestic philanthropy as well. Like people who have younger people who have like startup founders, families have wealth offices, and one part say does just social work. So that has also increased a lot. So in India itself, a lot of like money is going towards social impact as well.
So you also mentioned about greenwashing and creative accounting in CSR. Can you elaborate on that?
So I would say a lot of this was earlier when there were not too many structures to CSR. So I think over the years it has also changed of how the government is defining certain things. So earlier, for example, if someone would, there are these volunteering processes, right? Like an employee would go volunteer and all. So a lot of earlier, when it was not defined, a lot of people would be saying that my 20 employees have spent say 100 hours, and this into their salary is accounted for, in my CSR. But now that has sort of gone. But also examples of, there are a lot of times you would see a lot of organizations doing this, that we've done tree plantation, which just happens in like thousands of numbers, but then that it's planted, but there's no sort of process to sort of take care of, what happens next. Even with things where, with farmers, they would, a lot of organizations would give like, new equipments, but there's no operations and maintenance. So a lot of times like this in a way happens, but there is no sort of thought process on how it will maintain, who will look at this. So this has changed, though I would say over a period of time, because now the government has a structure as to, these are the 10, 12 themes that you have to work on, and so the framework has to be around it. Now, last I think 4 years or so back, there was also another compulsion, like how 2% is compulsory. Now there is a compulsion that for every organization which has a 10 crore say CSR budget, and if you are spending over 1 crore on a particular one project, then you have to do an evaluation study. Then you have to show the impact of how you are doing from a third party like us. So at least the compulsion has become, to rather than just ensuring that you are making it internal sort of thing that I've spent. Now it's become a compulsion to report it back, to put it on your website as well. And there are a lot of people, a lot of organizations doing that. So there, it has moved from the greenwashing, because a lot of people would use that as marketing as well. Like okay, we are any soap company would come and then okay, then this our soap is being used in say schools, but then you can't just give your products because that's not really CSR. So it's a lot of new aspects that earlier were under the greenwashing one. The government has sort of changed the definitions to sort of ensure that these are not happening now.
So how does the fourth wheel, your company, make money? Because like you said, it's compulsory for a few firms now to get external audits and requirements done. So how do you all actually make money, and like how do you all get clients? How does the entire process work?
So like any consulting firm, no, like we have sort of a whole process. Uh, I mean, now we've been 15 years, so we usually get a lot of inbounds as only of when same clients keep coming back, because they would have new projects starting or new projects ending in a way where they would need these sort of services.
So the same like your company can constantly work with the same organization for a brief period of time. There's no restriction on rotation and stuff.
No, but organizations still do. A lot of CSR would prefer that they won't keep coming back to us every year. They would like this year we are there, next year someone else is there. They internally for their processes also keep changing. But there are so many projects and there are so many different sort of geographies that they work in. So we would come in for say different kinds, or we would come back say 2 years post. But a lot of, like I said, inbound this thing, and we also sort of talk a lot about our work on social media and everything. So through that also we get inquiries, and it's like any consulting firm, right? Like where we have these services, someone would come. A lot of people put RFPs, like request for proposals on certain websites that say we want to do this study in this geography with this sample number. This is the sort of project, and we would apply like a proposal, and we go through the process of giving a presentation, doing some back and forth on the understanding, and then we either win or lose a proposal. So it's a mix of these things, and obviously there are a lot of other sort of organizations also, who work on this. All the big four have a department which does this. So like we are a whole company, but like someone like PwC, KPMG, they have a department who focuses just on doing these evaluations, working in the social impact space. So it's very similar to how they would approach.
And like how does this work? For example, if a organization has 10 crore budget for CSR, so that will be actually used for the impact, right? So how do you all get paid here in the middle? Is it over and above the 10 CR, or like how?
No, it's usually a part of it, which is also, I mean, a lot of times we see that the NGOs end up paying us from part of their implementation budget, which we are hoping changes also as you go, because at the end of the day, it's the donors who want the report, they want the processes, indicators, and everything. So ideally, it should be a separate line item when a CSR or a donor sort of gives. But a lot of time, it has been a part of the NGO is getting say 1 crore amount, and we would get a part of that sort of chunk. So they have to plan their design in a way because they know there's some, impact evaluation cost is going to be there, which is usually what happens now. But the ideal will be that organizations who are giving the grants, giving the money, they should sort of, pre-decide that, okay, either they are hiring us or capacitate the NGOs itself that, okay, you can hire one person to look at the M&E of just this project. So in a way, from that budget only it comes. Usually it's anything between 5 to 8% of,
Okay.
say, the cost of the project that you would want to put on
Okay.
this thing. So either it could be internal systems that you are building, you would collect data as the project goes rather than, calling us at the end. But 5 to 8-ish% is what mostly it sort of, comes to.
And is there any regulatory requirement around this that it cannot exceed this percentage?
So there is always a confusion in this because the government processes says that you can't do more than 5% on admin cost. But then do you call this admin cost? Do you call this part of the project cost? People treat it differently.
It's a gray area.
Yeah, it's sort of a gray area, but because it's the ideal thing is that evaluation is not an external process in a way. It should be part of your program design. That from day zero you are making these processes. You are collecting data on what you want. You could have one-off studies at different points in time, but it should be very much be part of the program design. Because if you are not able to measure what you are doing, how do you even know if your program is working or not? And it's not about saying that if it's not working, let's stop. It's more about saying that, okay, if this part of the program is not working, what does the data say? What can I change? So it's very much a part and shouldn't be looked as a separate cost as such.
And as per you, do you think this is a scalable business model?
So there are very big organizations in our sector who are 100 crore plus as well. So there obviously a lot of them have scaled. A lot of larger organizations are part of it. I would say we are a mid-sized boutique consulting firm. So there are obviously a lot of examples of scaling, and we've
Any famous names which are...
So Satva is one which
Okay.
is a very large organization. They also started around the same time as us. I think a few years here and there, but they are, I think, pretty large, and they do a lot of things with the government. So scale usually comes when government is part of anything that you do, because CSR might seem 30,000 crore plus might seem a large number, but if you really put down the 2-3 large government schemes, it will go. Just the 2-3 large schemes will be higher than 30,000 crores only.
Oh.
So, I mean, of the state, the central government, if you say the larger, government schemes only are very big. The budgets are very high. So, government is talking in lakhs of crores, and here it's 30,000 crores. So, scale will come with the government only. And the main aspect, obviously, it's not the product, it's a service. So, people are very important of, getting the right set of people, training them. And scale will only happen in a service industry if you have the right processes and systems in place, handbooks, toolkits. So we also do a lot of these things internally to ensure that the team that is joining us has the access to different processes that we are doing. Governance is very important. So if you are able to do these sort of softer aspects, then only scaling is possible. And for us also, I think we've grown to a certain number of people, but it's still very founder led. With me and Sharon, both of us are still very much part of operations and everything. We are in that phase where we are trying to take a step back and have our team, empower them to sort of ensure that they are delivering. But we are also very close to everything. It's very difficult as a founder to let go day to day as well. But we are in that sort of phase to get our teams to, because we are also in the growth phase, so we want the team to sort of take on things, so we could sort of look at more building the organization and not just delivering the projects. So to scale, that movement from delivery to building has to come, which we are in sort of midway to, I would say.
But don't you think in terms of challenges when you're scaling these big organizations, I mean big consulting firms, they would have developed a relationship with the government, and like you said, the main money is coming from the government itself. So for a mid-size or a boutique firm, how can they grow? Because they'll stick to the big guys, right? Or will they take a chance?
Yeah, they do. I mean, now also we, so one is the government, the other is all these international organizations, the UN organizations and all. So those do still, give opportunities to organizations like us with, maybe start with a smaller project and then you sort of go into their system. And a lot of them have this thing that, if it's, say, an MSME, if it's a women-led organization, so diversity is very important for these organizations and they would give us opportunities. And I think government also is giving importance to, bringing in MSMEs, bringing in obviously women-led organizations. The GEM platform is there where you could apply. So I wouldn't, because they also, depending on the size of the program, they would select, say, a larger player for certain things. But we would also say get opportunities. So we work with one of the metro that has come
Oh.
in another city.
Okay.
So we were working with them for 3 years. So everyone who sort of, because of the metro construction, everyone who was whose house was sort of going or sort of their offices were going, we used to track those people for 3 years. From the time they would lose have a this thing that your house will shift to this thing, we would track them for 3 years to ensure that they've got all the government facilities that they were supposed to. If either it was house, money, and beyond that also, how that sort of government department could help them. So it could be sort of providing skills, providing micro loans to women. So we've also got smaller opportunities. We've also done a project in the Northeast with the World Bank. So it was through a Swiss organization who got the project, and we were like their India partners. So there are opportunities where we slowly are building our sort of work with these international organizations, some government ones. So I would say mid-sized to smaller projects, they would give us opportunities, but larger ones, obviously you need the bench strength, you need the inputs, beforehand, which the larger organizations have and we would get.
And I mean, I don't know if this question is entirely relevant, but the organizations who hire you all to eventually, measure the impact, and if you come across a situation where it's actually not being done properly, you have to eventually go back to them and report about it. But there is a possibility, right? Because since they are only technically in a way funding it, so they'll not, there'll not be entire transparency or like you said in metro scheme of things, where the people actually don't get accommodation properly, and you come across a situation, then is there any regulatory authority you can report to, or?
Not really, but also we've also learned over the years that it's some things are very obvious. All organizations see, they don't need us to sort of come and tell them. But earlier, I think when we were also young, we would come and say that these 5 things are not working at all in this program and all. But we've also learned with age and time in the space that every program will have certain aspects because it's such a complex environment and things work, don't work. Could be a lot of external sort of things as well because of which certain things are not working. So the idea is to sort of come and tell them that what are, say, the 2 or 3 things which are working very well, and what are certain things which need attention, and what are the recommendations and solutions. And we've not had any organization who's come back and said that okay, this is wrong or whatever. And people understand that you are doing so many things in a structure where things can go beyond you also, but what do you learn from it and how do you implement is what is important. So we also don't go with a mindset that a lot of times when we go on the ground to collect data, a lot of local partners will think that we've come to audit them, that we are here to sort of check if 10 things were given or not.
Right.
But we also then have trained our team to ensure that they are going from a collaborative mindset, a partnership mindset, that we are here to sort of learn from you as well, and then maybe we know the techniques and the processes to put it in a certain framework, but at the end of the day it's their work on the ground which we are writing about. So yeah, how do you approach certain things and how do you bring out not just issues but recommendations for the issues? And I think we've had most people sort of come and accommodate it.
Okay. And when organizations like they have multiple opportunities and proposals to invest in various projects, right? So any idea of how they take up a call of which project to invest in? How do they measure their return on investment?
So there is a social return on investment method actually, which
Okay.
a UK-based organization has done, which basically says for every rupee you've invested, what is the value generated as per the community. So I mean, obviously at the start, this happens. There's both ways. There's a forecast way of doing also that I have these 3 projects. I'll sort of forecast into understanding which one will have how much sort of social impact, but not too many organizations use it. It usually happens, say, a year or 2 down, that what has been the social impact. So, for example, we worked with a bank on a sort of a skilling program, and they had like 3 or 4 partners, and sort of different kinds of trainings. But the goal was the same, that people get trained, people get jobs, have careers. So we did a social return on investment on all four partners, and then there were varying differences on what was the return value for each of the partners. So one idea was that one sort of partner had like a very very low value to someone who had decently high value. So what to learn from each other was also there, and then they could sort of take a call that okay, maybe next year going forward we stop this program because this is not yielding the impact that we wanted. But we learn from this process and tell the other partners as well that what worked, what didn't work. So this is how they decide. When I think evaluation is very important, because you can't just keep doing something and hope it works. So you have to have that evaluation lens that okay, what is working, what is not, and then take a call as you go. So it has to be an ongoing process. So there have been a lot of times where we've asked, our recommendations have been that okay, this geography needs to stop. There are not enough sort of responses here, or these two things need to be added for this program to work. Otherwise, you are just sort of spending money year on year without any impact. So that's where evaluation actually comes in picture. That you are understanding what is working, what is not, and taking it from there, and then taking the hard decisions also, that okay, maybe we've spent 5 years on this project, on this geography, but beyond the point, it's nothing is moving. So should we stop, should we put our resources somewhere else? So those decisions are also taken place.
So, as per the regulatory requirement where the company has to spend on CSR, if, for example, they decide to spend and they actually spend, but there's actually no impact, is it still considered that they have spent on CSR?
That, yeah, it is very much considered.
Okay.
Because, and I think one good thing is also that, right? Like, because I think corporates have that, I would say, that intent also, that it's okay to fail, right? You have this money, and there is patient capital. There are so many of these other aspects, and government might do certain things which are proven in a way that I will do this kind of program because this is the need. But I think corporates have that sort of time and resources to test new things, test new technologies, and there could be out of the 5 projects, 3 might fail, but 2 might do very well. So I think that is also a very important aspect, that you shouldn't go into anything thinking that once I go into the project, everything is going to work and my impact is going to be great. But if you fail and learn from it, that also is an impact in itself.
Okay. And as per you, what do you think is the future of this industry?
I think now one of the buzzwords or processes is systems thinking. We've done a few studies where we've talked to multiple NGOs on how they sort of think of impact, how do they measure impact. So a lot of them, earlier it would be that my program did X, Y, Z, I reached these numbers, these many people. Now I think a lot of people, a lot of organizations are moving towards systems change. That I'm not just talking about that one child that say my program is doing, that child can read and write according to what is required. But has my program been able to change the mindset of the parents, teachers, the government as well? Has my program become, is it only I am there, the program is running, or if I am not there tomorrow, is it becoming a sort of a part of the government system? And the government is also, it becomes like a process. So it's not that you keep coming, you have tried and tested. This is, say, a program like a teaching learning method is working very well. And now it's institutionalized with, how the government works. So a lot of that is changing, because otherwise you are just doing the same thing every year, because every year the classes change, the teachers keep moving. But are you able to change the system and then say, okay, now this is a set system and I can move out of here and go to the next geography? So systems change definitely is, one aspect that everyone is sort of looking at. The other is also realistic evaluation, where a lot of larger studies use RCTs, which is randomized controlled trials, that you would give a certain intervention to say 10 villages and not give the same thing to 10 villages and compare that because of my intervention sort of what changed. But now there's more and more this thing on realist evaluation, that what am I doing for who and how. So it's quicker sort of responses. These RCTs can go on for years as well. So, but what are you able to quickly sort of understand implementation? That's also, so realist evaluation and systems changes is the big things in the next 5-10 years to look at.
Okay. And if someone wants to build a career in this space, where should they begin? What should be their intent when they get into this?
I think what me and Sharon both did when we started was just be on the field as much as possible. uh, however much you obviously the academics, the theories are important to know, which a lot of people do study in their colleges, say if they've done social work, economics, that kind of background. But if I think in the beginning of your career, you have to go on the ground, do those interviews, go see what is really happening, how whatever you read of a program in a document, how is it really being implemented on the ground? Because everything looks great in a report, but what sort of goes down when implementation happens, there could be a lot of differences. We both, I think there was one project where we got early, I think third or fourth year of our organization, we got a project where we had to go to some 8 states, and Sharon took four, I took four, and we were out for like 1.5 months. And from I think Chhattisgarh, Jharkhand, Orissa, I did that whole belt, and I was just out for 1.5 months, and there was so much to sort of learn in the process. And otherwise, also, I think at the start is the more you know. Even today, like both of us still go back, for whatever number of days we can to our project. So if you don't go to the field, I think that your career just sitting in office is never gonna move.
Okay, and uh, again, I'm not sure if this question is entirely relevant, but since it's in the social impacting space, and it is used out of the budget of CSR, which people have organizations have decided to spend, and it's usually 5 to 8%. Are the people working in this industry paid well or motivated enough to paid well to be in this industry?
So now I would say it has changed. I myself, I think on an average every month get at least 8 to 10 CVs of people wanting to move from pure consulting in these big four to
Oh.
social impact space, because people have worked in this for 10 years, 20 years, and now they, are tired of the rat race and want to sort of work on something which is, more socially relevant to them. And with a lot of these consulting organizations, CSR and everything, but I would say the salaries have gotten better, but it is still, I would say, compared to say another consulting firm, it is still lower. So those differences are still there, but I think slowly it might get better. NGO salaries are, I would say, little better over the years, but it's still lesser than what someone with the same skill set might earn in so a different sector.
Okay. And if someone wants to support the social cause and if they want to donate some amount, how do they verify that this is going to the right place and everything is proper?
I think the easiest and the most important is to go spend a day.
Acha.
You whatever you can see through a report, like I said, is only so much. And I think at the end of the day, donation shouldn't always only be money. It can be very well your skill sets as well. So a lot of organizations also, a lot of companies also give out certain, say their marketing team can help an NGO do their branding, for example, or manage their social media, or what to do an audit of their social media. So till you don't go and be part of the process, even for a day for that matter, then only you will understand, what do they need. Do they need money right now to immediately sort of support certain things? Do they need some skill set? It could be, accounting is not sort of happening in a certain way. Can you bring your skill to that? So, you don't have to always think of donations as money, but it could be a lot more also.
Okay. And if you had to give any piece of advice to organization for creating a real impact, what would that be?
Creating a real impact. I think that every organization, I think it's more about sort of understanding what is the. I think having that same sort of language across your teams. A lot of time it happens that the leadership thinks of impact in a certain more strategic way, more long term view. The implementation thinks in a certain way. The field team, which is actually implementing, is a very activity driven thing, that in this month I have to train so many people or I have to do so many sessions. So I think overall, if the organization has a similar language of what impact looks like, I think then reaching that becomes simpler for them.
And having been in this industry so far, how has the way you have changed about how you look at your problems and privileges?
I think one of the reasons I started and wanted to work in this was very much because of understanding my privilege. So when I was in school, since school I'd been volunteering with a lot of NGOs since my 11th grade, I would say. And in college I was with like I think 2 or 3 different NGOs, and I would teach basketball, I would teach computers. So I mean they gave me max to teach, but I was like maybe I'm not able to do that. So I took the simpler things which I was interested in. And I think in one of the organizations, one of the NGOs, when I was in second year or something in college, they took us for 2 or 3 days to a village nearby. So all the girls went to one village, all the boys went to another village, and there we had to stay with the family for like 3 days and like just be a part of the family, do what they are doing, you know. And that I think really sort of got me more and more interested. So I had never seen the social impact space as a career, but that really made me understand my privileges. How do I look at problems? And then I started looking at that, is there a career here? Can I do something in this? Can I understand this a little better? So I think till you don't if you're not put in that sort of place and understand your privileges, it's sort of difficult to sort of come into the sector also. So I think that led me to understand things better and made me interested and made me want to be a part of the sector as well.
Okay. So I have some rapid fire questions for you. Impact or scale?
Impact.
Data or intuition?
Intuition backed by data.
Strategy or execution?
Strategy should lead to execution.
One habit every impact driven organization must have.
Like I said earlier, the definition of impact needs to be clear throughout the organization.
The most overused word in the sector.
Empower, transformation, etc.
One habit every impact driven leader must have.
The ability to understand data.
One book, report, or person that changed how you think.
I will tell you a couple of my the ones I like since we are on a podcast. I think
Yeah.
there's one called No Extensions. It's by one of these organizations called Dasra. His founder. So a lot of Indian NGOs, founders, a lot of them sort of come on that podcast. So they talk about failures. They talk about a lot of things. So to get a perspective of the Indian non-profit, it's called No Cost Extension. So that is definitely one. And then otherwise there's Amit Verma's Seen Unseen specific episodes. So there's one episode of Rukmani S. There's one episode of Karthik Muralidharan. Both of them have books as well. So depending on how your attention span is, you could either read their books or you could listen to the podcast. This thing. So these, and then I think beyond that, personally. I have read heard podcast of Naval Ravikant a lot. And I think one of his quotes is do long-term things with long-term people. And like I said, me and Sharon were in school in the 9th grade together. So now I think it's what 25 years that we know each other. In our team, there are 3-4 people who've been with us for 10 plus years.
Wow.
Someone who's been with 7 plus years. So I think just having that right group of people to sort of work with to do these long-term things, having an organization for 15 years is right now, I think just seems 15 years seems very long, but doing it with the right people, I think doing long-term things with long-term people is important. So I think I keep going back to a lot of things that Naval Ravikant also says.
Okay. So thank you, Payal, for taking the time and joining us today.
Thank you. Pleasure being here.
Thank you. Thank you for watching this episode till the very end. If you found this episode to be valuable and insightful, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. And let us know in the comment section below your takeaways from each of our episodes. Thank you.